into today's. So before we dive into today's section, I would like to hand over to the coordinator of OWN for the opening remark. Thank you for being with us, and let's welcome the coordinator, Miss Aleke. I hand over to you. Your mic, you are muted, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Fambo Huda. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm Ms. Jane Aleke, and I'm the coordinator of the OAD Women's Network. I'm here to welcome you all tonight for being here to attend this OAD research project event today. So it's an honor to have you all be in attendance tonight here. But before we move on, I would like to give a brief introduction of what OAD Women's Network is all about. It's all about OAD, the Women's Network of OAD houses every woman that is in OAD network, PhD holders and PhD candidates as well. So it's a group that houses every woman in OAD, and our vision is to contribute to the development of in Africa by eliminating all forms of gender inequality through research, innovation and technology, citizen participation, and human capital development. And our mission is enhancing gender equity for sustainable development. Our main objective is to bring together and engage all African female intellectuals as well as relevant stakeholders to enhance sustainable development in Africa. So tonight, what we are here to do is to give back to our community as part of our pilot project by helping undergraduates to get more acquainted with what academic research is all about. So with all that said, I'll hand over back to Dr. Hulda to continue with her moderating. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Coordinator. So let's quickly get into the core of today's section. So before we continue, let me welcome our today's speaker, which is a lady, Madam Abimbola. Engineer Abimbola, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me briefly introduce our today's speaker. Today's speaker is Engineer Abimbola Susan Ajagun. She's an accomplished engineer and lecturer with over 10 years of experience at the Federal University of Technology, Nigeria. She has an electrical computer engineering background and is finishing her PhD in electronical engineering at Hohai University in Nanjing, China. With a strong foundation in research and development, business development, and project management, Engineer Abimbola actively engages in national and international research and projects such as artificial intelligence in clean energy project funded by the Royal Academy of Engineering UK grant under the Higher Education Partnerships in Sub-Saharan Africa. Abimbola passionately advocates for clean energy and gender equality in STEM. As such, she founded the Females in Clean Energy Foundation, an organization focused in sensitizing and engaging female and youth in clean energy transformation agenda for sustainable development in line with the SDGs 7 and 5. In line with her interests, she provides consultation services to institutions like Technology, a leading energy company in Nigeria's green hydrogen ecosystem. She also remotely works with the African Hydrogen Partnership under one of its directors to lay a foundation for establishing green hydrogen economies and societies in Africa, allowing her to gain in-depth knowledge of hydrogen energy technologies and relevant supporting policy. It is our honor today to have her as our first speaker for this training. So thank you, Madam, for accepting our invitation and welcome.
Hey, thank you so very much for that wonderful introduction. Glad to be here and to be part of the part of the network. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So can I share my screen?
Yes, you can. Just give me a second. I'll stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, you need to enable me share. The host needs to give me permission to share.
Yeah. Hello, Miss Jane. Please make her co-host. Oh, sorry, madam, for inconvenience.
You can now share your screen. I've made you a co-host, Dr. Engineer Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Not yet. Can you please check again? Still saying host. Okay, now it's fine now. Thank you. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Okay. Once again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on this webinar, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share out of the little that. Right. So, being the first speaker for this event, today we'll be talking about structuring a paper or thesis. So I would love us to have make this section more of an interactive section, like in between. If you have questions or you want me to explain further, you can. So let's start with what is even a paper. We talk about paper, thesis, and why structure. So before we dive into that, I would want to, okay, sorry, excuse me, trying to take this off my screen. Okay, what is our outline for the outline for today's presentation? We are going to have our introduction, which speaks about the importance of structure in academic writing, the learning objectives for today's section, like what will be the outcome of the whole section, and the definition of a paper thesis, key sections of a paper, which is what we really want to focus on. And it has this. We have the title, the abstract, the introduction. So we're going to be learning all about each of these components and how to effectively work on them. Then we'll also talk about writing the references. Yes, I didn't include that as the key section of the paper, but it's very, very important. And then we have the appendices. Then we'll look at editing and proofreading, which is important in academic writing, and then tips for writing a paper or a thesis. So to start, before I start talk about the importance of structure in academic writing, what do we mean by a paper? We all say, oh, I'm writing a paper, I'm writing a paper. A paper is a type of academic writing where you provide an in-depth analysis of research, findings, and interpretation of maybe a single topic. And you present that for the audience, for everyone to be able to have access to. When you talk about thesis, it's the same thing. Well, this time around, you're presenting that in support of an academic degree or a professional. It's a requirement maybe for you to graduate, to have your master's degree, to have a doctorate degree, or bachelor's degree. So that's just the difference, because you can be in the industry and write a paper. So you're working in the industry, but you have maybe a new insight into something that is being produced in your company, and you want that to be public. You could also do that. You write a paper and then you publish that. So, but the difference now with having a thesis is just this is for an academic degree. And so why is structure important in academic writing? Firstly, you want to have structure is important because you want clarity. You want clarity. You want to be able to say, oh, you want to read a paper and be able to say whatever you're reading in this paper is clear and easy to follow. So for clarity, a well-structured paper ensures your ideas are clear and easy to follow for anyone who picks up the paper to read. You also want to have that logical flow. This is like very important. You don't want to have a document that is disjointed. When you're reading through a document from the beginning, and then you get to the middle, and then you kind of off balance, and you're wondering, is this thing relating to what I started reading in the beginning? You don't want that. So proper organization guides readers through your arguments or research. Also, to be able to improve impact, it's easier when you have a very good structure. It's easier to be able to convey the contributions you're making. So if, for example, if you have a paper, at the end, someone is able to read and able to say, oh, okay, this is the contribution. It's clear without any form of ambiguity. So what are the learning objectives for today? What do we hope to achieve at the end of this section? Firstly, to understand the sections of a paper or thesis, learn how to organize and write each part effectively, and also gain tips for maintaining a consistent writing process. Because you don't want to write, you might want to write a paper and you see sometimes for different individuals, it takes months, some it takes a shorter period. So there are also some tips that you need to actually use to help you have a consistent, to have a consistent writing process, and also to ensure that you achieve your goal at a minimum time. So now let's see, we've already talked about this in the beginning. So what is a paper or thesis? So it's a detailed piece of writing based on research analysis and critical thinking. What's the purpose? Mainly to contribute new knowledge, present your research findings, or offer insights into a specific field, whether in engineering, whether in sociology, whether in other areas like psychology. Whatever it is, all you are trying to do is contribute new knowledge. So this is very important. So I'm emphasizing it again. What is the importance of structure? Just have that in mind. First is to guide reader. A well-structured paper helps readers easily follow your arguments. That's just the main thing. You want anyone reading that paper to be able to understand what it is all about. Secondly, it organizes your thoughts. It provides a clear framework to present your ideas, like logical flow, like I mentioned earlier. Then it also meets academic standards. When you send papers to all of those journals or conferences, you always see they tell you, oh, this is their own guideline. This is what they want you to follow. So proper structures aligns with institutional or journal expectations for academic writing. Most times when you submit your paper and it doesn't follow that guideline, firstly, the paper can be rejected instantly. So it is very important. You might have written have a very good content, but if you don't follow the structure, that might make your paper, get rejected. So it is very, very important in academic writing. So now let's go to what are the key sections of a paper or thesis. We have just 8 key sections, and it starts with the title. We have the abstract, we have the introduction, the literature review, the methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. The first thing you see in a paper is the title, right? Which sometimes we also call the topic, right? Especially when it comes to our thesis. This just describes the focus of your paper. Then we have the abstract, which is the next thing you see after your title. It's just a summary of the entire introduction into whatever you're talking about. Then we have the literature review, which helps you, to compare your work with other research that has been done in that area. Then we have the methodology, which explains how the research was conducted. The results section presents the data or the findings, and then you have the discussion where you discuss the result that was presented, and then we have the conclusion. Like I said initially, we will talk about the references and the appendices, but we don't include that. It's not really the key section of the paper, because after concluding, the references are just what you've highlighted all through, what you've cited all through your document. So I wouldn't call that the key sections of your paper, but they are also very, very important. So let's start with title. What makes a good title? What makes a good title? How can you say, oh, this title is very okay, it's very understandable, oh, this is a very good topic. Once you see the title of that of the paper, and you're like, oh, this is work, I want to read it. What makes a good title? Firstly, your title should summarize the paper's main idea in a very clear and direct way. That's the first thing. Your title should be able to capture everything your paper talks about. And when I say talks about, I'm not talking about the literature review and all that, but the main idea behind your paper. And this should be very short. You should keep it within 10 to 15 words. A lot of times we don't want a very long title. So it is good that we keep it very, very short. Second, it reflects the focus of your research. That's the title. A title that reflects the focus of your research is a very good title. It captures the main concept of variables. Let's, for example, we have like the impact of renewable energy on rural development in Nigeria. If I want to highlight these as a good topic now, I know this is impact. We are talking about renewable energy. We are also talking about what? Rural development. And we have what? A location. That's a particular region, which is Nigeria. So this is an example of a topic that reflects the focus of your research. Then it also includes what? Relevant keywords. You use terms that make it easy for others to find your paper when searching academic databases. So for example, like the initial example I mentioned, now we have the impact of renewable energy on rural development in Nigeria. Keywords there are renewable energy. Another keyword is what? Rural development. So you know that once someone key into, trying to look for papers, maybe in Google Scholar and post renewable energy, it's possible. Definitely your paper will pop up, because that's a keyword. If you talk about rural development, that might also pop up, which means it's also a keyword. So use terms that make it easy for others to find your paper when searching academic databases. Ensure key concepts like methodology or target region are mentioned if relevant. For example, Nigeria. So if I'm working on, say, a paper that has to talk about sub-Saharan Africa, and yes, the part of sub-Saharan Africa, right? So now if we are looking for papers, and I'm just saying, oh, okay, rural development in sub-Saharan Africa is broader. It might not really bring out that particular paper. But if my focus is Nigeria, now I've narrowed it down to say I have West Africa, I have Central Africa, and in West Africa, I want to talk about some countries, and I want Nigeria as a case study. That paper, you can actually say, oh, rural development in Nigeria, and then this pops up. So it's very important to also to note that, you know, adding maybe target region is important in your title. Then the methodology. So let's say for example, the development of a solar system using let's say maybe optimization, a particular optimization method or artificial intelligence for this. So these are what's specific. You're mentioning the methodology or the statistical use of so for this. So these are very important when it comes to your title. Then the next thing is that you avoid jargons like complex terms. You don't want to include, say, CO2. Just try that in your title. Or you just don't want to, you know, like just names that you know that they are complex, that is from even layman language, is not easy to understand, except if you're a professional or an expert in that area. So a title should be understandable by both specialists and non-specialists. I was asking Dr. Jane initially, I would have wanted us to have a poll, you know, have some topics and let's vote to
Yes,
see.
that's what we are trying to. I can't see it from my system here, but I'm trying to see if I can get the other co-hosts to set it up, because I can't do the polls from here. Yeah. So, Huda, please, can you help us out if you can check if you can do the polls from your own end, please.
Okay, let me try. No, I can't.
Doc, I'm going to send you like 4 different topics.
Okay.
So you can vote that can continue while we. Okay, sent.
All right. Okay.
So we can have that in the poll. Let's all vote to see, you know, which do you consider a good topic. Right, we can talk about that later.
Okay, Dr. D will help us to do that.
Yes. Okay. So that's all. These are the key components of what a good title. So now, what are those tips that you should focus on when developing your title? Firstly, focus on what your paper is about and why it is important. What your paper is about and why it is important. Secondly, you revise the title once your paper is written, ensuring it aligns with your final content. Because usually in the beginning, you're writing a paper, yes, you have an idea of what you intend to embark on. Maybe in the course of the research, there are moments where you have to change maybe your methodology, you have to add something new, and which is very important that you also capture in the title. So at the end of your paper, you always ensure that you revise that title to see if it actually captures your entire research. Just capture the idea and everything that I've written so far. So it is very, very important to do that. So that is it for the title. Now let's go to abstract. Even though we see abstract at the beginning of a paper after the title, it is usually the last thing we write. Yes, it is usually the last thing we write. But sometimes, yes, we can write an abstract at the beginning, but definitely we are revising it at the end. And why do I say this? You know, like I have an idea now. Say I want to talk about gender equality in STEM for sub-Saharan Africa, right? And I have an idea, of what the problem is and what I want to do and how I want to go about it, right? So I can write an abstract, like a summary, of what I want to do. Usually, especially when you have people you want to work together, you are not just the author, you have other authors you want to work with, and you have the main idea. Sometimes you can summarize that and have it, shared among yourselves to say, oh, okay, this is an idea, this is what I want, and this is what I want to write. But that's just at the beginning. That's where abstract is kind of, written at the beginning, but usually it doesn't capture everything that has to do with the paper. So abstract is a concise summary of your entire paper or thesis, no more than 150 to 250 words. Some journals will tell you 200, some will tell you 250, and you need to stick to these limits. And what's the purpose of an abstract? Basically, it tells you, it gives you an overview of the whole research, of the whole content of that paper. So if you're looking for, when you're doing literature review, when you're looking at papers, the first thing you look at the abstract. You quickly scan through, you're looking at the topic, the problem in between, you're looking at the methodology, and you're looking at the conclusion. So everything has to be captured in your abstract. It gives a summary of the entire paper. So that is why it is very important, because someone can read your abstract and don't bother to go through the whole document and thinks it's useless. So a paper can have very good content, but because the abstract is not well written, it can be discarded. So it is very important. So what are those key components of an abstract? Yes, we have the research problem. Your abstract should capture your research problem. Say, for example, we say from the beginning, oh, this study examines the impact of solar energy in rural development, right? You stated the research problem already. Then it captures also the objective, or it assesses the effectiveness of solar energy in providing sustainable power solution, in a rural community. That's your objective. So what methodology do you use? So you have to also say, oh, data was gathered maybe through field study and analyzed using a statistical tool, or an optimization method, or this optimization method was used to do this. So you have to also capture that in your abstract. Then briefly, you have to say the key findings. Oh, at the end of those research or the study, the result shows that there is a significant increase in energy access based on what? The use of solar energy system for rural development. So, and what's your conclusion? In conclusion, which is usually you capture the conclusion maybe with some of the recommendation. Or in conclusion, solar energy is the use of solar energy is pivotal for energy development in Nigeria or in sub-Saharan Africa. Well, with the focus of maybe the stakeholders have something like stakeholders have to invest in infrastructures. So what we are saying that is your abstract will capture what? The research problem, the objectives, the methodology, the key findings, and the conclusion, and all within that word limit, 150 to 250 words. Always pay attention to what the journal you're submitting to ask. Always pay that attention. You have to count word by word to ensure that you do not lose sight of that. Okay, so what are the tips for writing a very good abstract? Like I mentioned in the beginning, abstract is what you write last. But yes, there are times you have to write it in the beginning. If you are the one who, you have the concept, the idea, you might have written that as a summary, right? And then after the whole research, after the whole paper, you go back and edit and write it to capture everything in that paper. It has to reflect the full content in the paper. So you have to also be concise, stick to the word limits and avoid unnecessary details. Then also avoid jargons, make sure the abstract is understandable to both specialists and general readers. So anyone who picks up the paper can understand. Now we move to introduction. Introduction is literally the word introduction. It sets the stage, is the background of your research. I know most of the time, maybe in thesis, you write a background of study, yeah? It sets the stage for your whole paper. You have the abstract already, right? have your introduction. If somebody doesn't get, if you don't engage your reader from the introduction, it's very, very difficult to be able to take them through when it comes to maybe your methodology, not to talk of your results and conclusion. So it sets the stage for your whole paper. And also its main purpose is for you to introduce the topic in a way that makes readers want to continue reading. Get that again. Introduce the topic in a way that makes readers want to continue reading. It means that you can write your introduction. If I have very long, a lot of things written in there, 2 pages and everything. And then readers are not even interested. They don't go past maybe the first 2 paragraphs and they dump it. So it is very important that you know how to write it in a way that makes readers want to continue reading. I'm going to give an example. Well, first, and then you should also present the research focus. Your introduction should clearly state the problem or question you aim to address. It should be clear from the beginning, from your introduction, because it is actually what the first page for your research. So what are the key components of an introduction? Like I mentioned earlier, background information. It briefly describes the topic and why it is important. For example, we have why is rural electrification. We are talking about rural electrification now. And from that topic title in the beginning, we said the impact of what? Solar energy in rural electrification in Nigeria. Now, here we have the background information saying rural electrification is the major challenge in sub-Saharan Africa, impacting economic development and quality of life, right? You could see that it started basically on sub-Saharan Africa and how it is a challenge. It has captured that already. And it says, it should clearly state the problem. Now you've captured that, oh, okay, it's the major problem in sub-Saharan Africa. You have to narrow it down. Now, despite efforts to expand, where we have the second, now it clearly states what the problem your research aims to solve. Despite efforts to expand energy access, millions of Nigeria remain without reliable electricity. These are the places, or this is a place also where you can include data, statistics data and say, oh, about 67% of Nigerians are without what? About half of Nigeria populations are without electricity, or saying, oh, only 67% of Nigerians, have access to electricity. This is where you can also make maybe a very distinguished variation maybe between other African countries, saying, oh, comparing sub-Saharan Africa to other parts of the world, or maybe Asia, and saying how they progress. So it just has to flow. So you've started sub-Saharan Africa, narrow it down to Nigeria, and what the problem really is. Next is now the objective. Specify what you hope to achieve with the research. So now we come here and say, this study aims to evaluate the effectiveness of solar power in improving rural electrification. That is your aim, and it has to be captured in your introduction. So you've captured the general background about rural electrification, sub-Saharan Africa, and how you can impact quality of life. It comes your research problem, and then now your objective. And then sometimes, research questions. Some people add, some don't add. It depends on your flow, on how you want to present your work. So in between, you can have questions saying, oh, your research question, especially when it comes to thesis, yes, definitely you have research questions. But in paper, sometimes we don't have that. Okay, I can see the poll now. So we get back to that, why they continue to vote. So present your research, your research questions. So can solar energy provide a sustainable solution to rural electrification in Nigeria? That is your research question. Then you now come to what? The structure of the paper. That's at the end of your introduction, which is usually your chapter 1, right? You say, you have an example, so you say the remainder of this paper is organized as follows, or the rest of this paper is structured as follows. Oh, section 2 reviews the literature, section 3 outlines the methodology, and section 4 presents the results, while in section 5, we have what? The conclusion. So that's basically what we have, for the introduction. So what are the tips that can guide you for when writing the introduction? One, like I said earlier, start broad, then narrow down. So I'm talking about Nigeria, rural development, yes, but I've started with sub-Saharan Africa. How Africa have no energy deficit, how it is a big problem, right? And narrow it down now to Nigeria, specifically saying that, oh, Nigeria's energy access is just 6 to 7%, which means that almost half of the population are without electricity. You've narrowed it down, and this is the problem. You cannot narrow it down further to say, okay, what are the problems? Why is this energy access low in Nigeria? And you now start talking about things, maybe it has to do with infrastructure or lack of investments in renewable energy, maybe still using traditional energy sources and all that. Then now you come to the problem to say, oh, since this is the problem, the use of traditional energy resources, now they want to start using renewable energy resources. And we're looking at solar energy because Nigeria has, what's high solar intensity and all that. So you've narrowed it down. Start overload the introduction with unnecessary details. Focus on providing essential information. Not because you just want to have maybe very lengthy paper, you have to have a lot of pages. Make sure what you are focused. Then engage the reader, like we mentioned. Make sure your introduction is interesting and explains why the research is valuable. Yeah, and that's what we have for the introduction. So now writing the literature review. Literature review usually is the part that a lot of people do not like to work in. Even you can have a research topic, you've done your experiments in the lab, or you have your data that you've collected, and you just want to do that and provide the result. But you need to do the literature review. Why? It is very important, because if you don't, you can find yourself, just repeating what has been done before. So literature review contextualize your research. That is, it helps you, to give, the reason for that your study within a given context. Say, oh, I am talking now about rural electrification, right? But a lot of papers, a lot of other researchers have talked about rural electrification. But this time, I am focusing on Nigeria, and I'm focusing on a specific type of renewable energy, which is what? Solar energy. So it is very, very important. What is another thing that is very important in literature review? Why you need to have literature review? It helps you to identify the gaps. You don't want to repeat what has been done. You want to contribute to knowledge, right? That's the reason for your research. So literature review, carrying out a literature review, helps you to identify the gaps in research. And it helps you to build a theoretical framework. Yes, after your literature review, you're able to build and say, oh, this method has been done, this has been carried out, and this is what needs to be done, to be able to improve that aspect of research. So it is very, very important. There are different types of literature review, which we will not, dive into, especially when you're writing review papers. There are different types of literatures, or review papers. But today we are just going to be looking at all the key components of literature review. Firstly, literature reviews, you need to summarize what other people have done. That is what it's all about. You're not specifically saying, oh, author this and this, carried out this, they use this method, and when they did, like, making it law. No, it has to just be what? A summary. Review relevant studies, books, and papers that relate to your research topic. And how, for example, we have there, we say several studies Several studies have explored the impact of renewable energy on rural electrification, but few focus on the specific challenges in Nigeria, right? So that's like a summary. So now, it's not just about you saying this is what has been done. You have to analyze and critique. It means you discuss the strengths and weakness of that particular paper, of the papers you're reviewing. So, for example, you have here, you say, while Smith's study provides valuable insights, it lacks a focus on the long-term sustainability of solar projects. Now, in context, let's say we are trying to look at in terms of maybe the region. While previous studies, you say, while all the studies that has been carried out focuses on solar energy, maybe in Europe, in Asia, or some hardly focus on regions in sub-Saharan Africa. That might be your own analysis. So you need to analyze and critique and be able to find out that gap. So the next thing is to now identify the gap. Point out what previous research has not covered. So there is little research on how cultural and social impacts affect the adoption of solar power in rural communities. That might be your own contribution. That is what you're looking at, right? Or it might be a geographical gap. There are different gaps to be identified depending on the type of research you're carrying out. But if you don't have a lot of study, make a lot of review a lot of literatures, it might be a problem to be able to identify that gap if you don't analyze and also critique. Then after that, you now position your own research by explaining how your study will fill the gap and contribute new knowledge. So after you do the whole literature, analyzing and all that, you have to come to say, this study aims to address these gaps by analyzing the social and economic impacts of solar power in Nigeria's rural region. If you can see that, you've mentioned your aim in the beginning, the introduction. Now, we're emphasizing that again in your literature review before you move towards to the next chapter. So what are those tips that you need to put in mind, while writing your literature? Firstly, is organized by teams. Like, this is very, very important. I don't know, for me, everyone says it's kind of, when people run away from review papers, I enjoy writing review papers because it's actually very easy for me to, go through other papers and analyze and, bring out whatever contribution. And why is this? It's just because I'm able to organize them into teams. Firstly, it is important to know that when you're writing your literature review, at least, because you see some papers, somebody is reviewing, and you're talking about papers that are like 10 years, before now. I'm not talking about a review paper, 10 years before. What are the contributions? So always, first, look for papers that are maybe 3 years, not even maybe 3 years, past 3 years. That's how it starts. So we're in 2024. If I want to write a paper now, I'll start looking for 2023, 2022, 2021 first. And then I go to, 2020, 2022, 2020, at least 3-5 years. That is very, very important because that's the only way you can actually see, the progress in that area of research and how you can be able to talk about your own contribution. So organize by teams, group it into teams. So there are different types of teams. Some you might decide to use methodologies. Say, for example, different optimization has been used, or some use ant colony, or some use some form of stochastic, optimization and all that. You can group into that. Or in this era of artificial intelligence, or some use this, or some use digital twin, and your own research, you're using a different method, or you're trying to combine different methods that have been used in the past. It's a very good way to write your literature review. I usually create a table where you have a table and also group by years. So in 2023, for example, what are the research papers in that year? Good research papers, not just all papers, from very good journals. What are their contributions? What are their limitations? With their name. So it helps, give clarity the methodology that was used, and it will help you, when making your own presentation. So now you can also group according to region. Right? We're talking about Nigeria now, right? So for solar energy, rural electrification in Nigeria, it's possible that all the previous research, all the addressed is maybe in Asia, maybe in Europe, or let's even say within sub-Saharan Africa, or maybe South Africa, East Africa. You mentioned those countries, South Africa, or Ghana has done this has been done in this, but it has never been done in Nigeria. That is also grouping. So you have to be able to organize your literature by teams. It is very, very important. Key findings, and that's where you're able to say, oh, this is the output of this research, and this is the limitation. So this is not done here, but this is done here. That's the number one tip. Then secondly, you have to be critical, not just descriptive. Like I mentioned earlier, you can't just say, oh, say Ajagon et al. Did a paper on this, they did this, they did this, they did that. No, you have to be able to bring out that limitation of their work and say, even though they did this method they used was so, you have to be able to critique, don't just summarize, critically assess each source and explain its relevance to your study. And then thirdly, use recent and relevant sources, right? You have to focus on up-to-date and high-quality research that directly relates to your topic. I'm in engineering. I know that if I want to write any paper, the first thing I go to maybe IEEE, explore. I go to Science Direct. I know where to go to get the papers that I need. It is very important. If you just do a general search on Google and just download different papers, it might not really be relevant, or they might not be in high impact journals. So it is good for you to get very good papers that have high impact, that has been read as highly acceptable for your literature review. That way you can have a clear guidance to your own work. And that's it for the literature review. Dr. Jane, do we have the result of the poll? So we could just talk about that before I move on.
Hold on a bit. Let's see.
Hi. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So, Miss Jane, can I see the results?
All right. Let me send it to you on WeChat because I can access it from here.
Okay, because I'm seeing it.
All right. I've sent it to you so you can.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Oh, I have it. I have it on Zoom. Okay, thank you.
Just share.
Yeah. Yeah. So can I
Okay, so let me stop sharing so you can share that, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, can you see? Can you
Okay,
see it?
yes, I can see that. I can see that. So, okay, the first topic, we're talking about, I see the first topic wins over the rest. The first one says, impact of renewable energy on economic development in sub-Saharan Africa. For those that voted, if anyone wants to talk, why do you think that topic is the best? It's a very good topic. Why do you think it's a good title? Anyone, I think you can just unmute and talk. Why do you think it's a good title?
The students are free to speak their minds now.
Yes, we're just taking a break out of it.
Yes,
So
because a lot of
just
people
want to
chose that
ensure
number one topic. So I also like to know why.
yes, I want to. So that's what I'm asking. Please feel free to share your reason. Why do you think that's a very good topic?
Okay. Those that chose number one option, please can
You
you
don't
let
want
me
to talk
know
about
why you chose that option? Um, I would, I would love to know that.
I think
Can you
you're in the
confirm
group
if
chat.
people are able to unmute themselves? Those who don't have admin or host rights. Possibly some people are trying to unmute themselves and they can't. Is there a way to confirm, please? Is everybody able to unmute themselves?
I think so, because I'm in the audience and I can unmute.
Oh,
Are you
okay.
hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, maybe let me start. Maybe I can encourage other persons to talk. Maybe some persons are shy. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Dr. Susan. So for myself, I didn't choose the number one, actually. I went with the third one, which is the hydropower potential for sustainable energy in Africa, a case study of Ethiopia. That was what I chose. And then why did I choose it? Simply because hydropower already tells us what type of renewable energy. So it simplifies that term already by telling us specifically what kind of the energy are we working on. Sorry, please. I think it's been closed.
Dr.
So,
Huda, please.
okay. So, yeah. So I chose that simply because of its specificity on what type of the renewable energy we'll be discussing on. And again, Africa, sub-Sahara Africa, I think is a very wide terminology. So bringing it down to like a case study in Ethiopia is also like pointing on specificity. Like, okay, we'll be talking about Africa, but most of the things we'll be discussing on will be on Ethiopia. So I think the third one has more or less more specificity compared to other options. So that was why I went for the third one. So this is just an encouragement. So everybody try to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other person? Tell us why you chose, why you voted the one you voted for. Okay, so we don't waste so much time. I'm going to, okay, someone is there. Sharon. I thought someone wanted to say something. Sharon, right? Okay. So it seems you are all shy. I should be shy too. I should cover my camera.
Sorry, but most of the students are in a hall. So yes,
okay.
yes. So some of
Okay.
them are using one screen by the university to connect to us, so they might not be able to use their So
Okay. Oh, now
those
I
that
understand.
join individuals that are able to use the phones to connect directly.
Okay. Thank you for that. So let's talk about the topics one after the other. I think I have it here. The first one talks about the impact of renewable energy on economic development in sub-Saharan Africa, right? Look at that topic clearly. Like the doctor mentioned, sub-Saharan Africa is broad, right? It's broad. Though it provides a clear focus, renewable energy and the region, sub-Saharan Africa. But it is still a bit broad, without also specifying the type of renewable energy. So you don't know what that paper really entails, what type of renewable energy, which area of sub-Saharan Africa is focusing on until you dive into it. So that topic does not really capture everything. And I can see a lot of people voted for that. So that is not clear. The second title talks about exploring the role of solar power in rural electrification in Nigeria. Yes, it's specific. It's focused on what solar power, and it also has a clear application, rural electrification in specific what region, Nigeria. So we can have that to say, oh, this is a very good topic. So just saying that topic, I know he's talking about what? Solar. He's talking about it's used for what? Rural electrification. Is also we're talking about a particular region. But maybe the con side of this would be that word exploring. What do you mean by exploring? What are you, it's a bit like a bit too, what do we call it now? Is it vague? So sometimes we try to avoid exploring. We want to be more specific. If you're saying examining the potential of solar power in rural electrification in Nigeria, that is a bit clearer than just saying exploring the role. Explore is a lot, right? So, but it's actually a good topic that you're able to say from just reading it, that this is about solar power, is about rural electrification in Nigeria. Number three, that is a very, very good and clear topic, honestly. You say hydropower's potential for sustainable energy in Africa, a case study of Ethiopia. Very specific, includes a clear topic, hydropower, the geographical focus, Ethiopia. It is very, very clear. Though, again, we have to be careful because this might be too narrow. So maybe someone from Asia, someone from you might not want to read this paper. If maybe their research is not focused on what they might be talking about hydropower, but because it's Ethiopia, they might not want to just look at it. So, but it is a very good topic. So even when we're narrowing down, we should also be careful that we don't narrow down too much, that it makes it too, that will reduce our audience. Let's put it that way. Then the last one we talk about was a comparative analysis of renewable energy policies in developing countries. This highlights the comparison and analysis and addresses renewable energy policies. But it lacks specific mention of what regions or country. So it just makes it somewhat very general. So that's part of the reason. So I would say 3 is still what? The best topic among those 4 topics. Thank you for voting. Thank you for contribution on that. So let's move on to the next thing. I think I have to share my slides again. Or does anyone have anything to add? Dr. Elijah, do you have anything to add on the topic, on the vote when it comes to title?
Yes, I would like to say that I think most people chose number 1 because of what you said at the beginning. Remember, you said something about impact.
Yeah.
So when many people saw the word impact in that one, they thought that should be the best. Yeah, so
I understand.
yeah, so I think the influence of the teacher is very important.
Thank you for that.
All right, all the best.
Okay,
Right,
thank
please.
you.
Thank you. Mhm.
So let's continue. And I'll continue from methodology, right? Oh, sorry, no. Let me take that back. Oh, can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So now let's continue. We've talked about the title, the abstract, introduction, and literature review. So after the literature review, the next key section is the methodology section. This is, I'll call it, this is the heart of your research, right? This is the heart of your paper. So what is the purpose of the methodology section? It's basically explain how you conducted the research, providing a very clear and detailed description of the methods used. Also, for your methodology, somebody else, the reader, should be able to replicate your study. It means if I pick up a paper and you said, oh, these are the methods used, analyzing them, I should be able to do that same thing and get the same results. So readers should be able to replicate your study based on details provided. Secondly, thirdly, then you have to be able to justify your approach. Methodology, you will say, oh, I use this methodology, but why? Which is usual. This is where we actually link to the importance of what? Literature review. You've seen what others have done, how they've done it, the results they've achieved, and you're doing it differently. Why? Because you want a different result, or you want an improved result of what is existing. So this stage, you are able to be able to justify why you chose specific methods and how they help answer your research questions. So what are the key components of the methodology? One, your research design. It states whether your study is qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. When we talk about qualitative, we're talking about maybe having some form of study that has to do with attitudes, why a social concept or others. But when it comes to, it's non-numerical. But when it comes to quantitative, it has to do with numbers, it has to do with data, it has to do with you having some sort of analysis in terms of mathematical models and others. Is quantitative. You have to say, oh, these amounts of things happen, how much it happened, how often it happened. That's quantitative. Or is it a mixture of both methods? You have to clearly state that in your methodology. So for example, this research adopts a mixed methods approach, combining surveys and interviews. So in this particular research, they've carried out some surveys and also carried out some interviews. So we also talk about the data collection methods. So explain how the data you use for your research was collected. Is it surveys, is it experiments in the lab, or case study? So for example, data was collected through structured surveys conducted in rural Nigeria villages. That's how you collected the data for this particular research. So for sampling, you describe how participants or data points were selected. So if, assuming I have a data, say for historical data of energy consumption in Ghana, right? And I want to be able to say, oh, okay, this data is from which year to which year. So there has to be some sort of sampling. Which one am I using? Those of us that maybe use some form of what do we call it now? Artificial intelligence and all that. You're able to say, oh, I use this particular set of data for testing and all that, and this is what I use to carry out the experiments. So it all varies. You have to be able to analyze, which comes to that sampling. A random sampling technique was used to select 200 households in 3 different regions. That's very specific. So we have data analysis. Now you analyze your data. Explain how you analyze the data. Is this statistical test, coding for qualitative data or not? So survey data was analyzed using SPSS or whatever tool you're using MATLAB, using this, and interview responses were coded for recurring themes. So that's how you analyze your data. So ethical considerations, this usually we don't talk about it a lot, but most of the time, especially when you are carrying out research that has to do with surveys. See, this ethical consideration describes any steps taken to protect participants and maintain ethical work standards. For example, participants were informed of the study's purpose and provided consent prior to data collection. You know, there are times when you have data and you know that data, the company doesn't want you to make it public, but you need it for that research. So all those are what's under ethical considerations. Those are the things, those are the key components of your methodology. To talk about your design, your data collection, the sampling, how you analyze, and then what the ethical consideration, if it's important in your that particular research. So what are the tips for writing the methodology? Firstly, be detailed and precise. Methodology is not where we write a lot of story as if we are still doing the literature review. Whatever story we need to write, we're writing it in our introduction and literature review. Your methodology is like straight to the point. This is what we are using. This is the amount of data we are using. Oh, this is what we've gathered. And this is how we are going to use that particular data to carry out this research. So be detailed and precise. Provide enough information for others to replicate your study, including tools, technologies, or specific procedures used. It's easy, you know. A lot of times when I talk with some of my colleagues about writing, I might not have an idea about a particular topic. If I have a very good paper, you know, in that area, and I read through it, I should be able to understand and see how that research was carried out and know what that entails, especially in the section of the methodology. So it is very, very important that even when a layman, somebody who is not an expert in that area, goes through your paper, they're able to see your methodology and have an understanding of what to do to arrive at the same results you achieved in your paper. So also justify your choices. So I'm using digital twin to model this particular energy consumption or maybe energy consumption in the UK. Why did I choose the digital twin? Oh, I chose Nigeria, you know, for this case study. Why? Because maybe solar energy is very, very abundant in that region, right? And I have to have data for it. Oh, the amount of solar intensity within maybe in every season, maybe in winter, in summer, and all that. So it's very important that you justify your choice. Or I'm using this optimization method. Why? Or I'm combining this method and this method because this has been used, and the combination of these one gives more accuracy than this. So it's very, very important to justify your choices. Explain why the chosen methods are appropriate for answering your research questions. That's basically the second tip. And then the third one, we talk about considering what limitations, because yes, we all do research. Most of the time we have maybe limitation. Like I said, this is where the concept you have in your head or at the beginning, the abstract, to say, oh, this is what I want to do. But in the course of methodology, while you're doing your experiments in the lab or doing the survey, you find out that you have to maybe make some adjustments, or you have some limitations maybe from getting samples for that particular region, and you have to switch to a particular different method of analysis and all that. So it is also important that you acknowledge those limitations in your methodology, e.g., small sample size, potential biases, you know, and explain how you mitigate them. That's how you are able to overcome those limitations. And that's that for methodology. So we look at the next one, which is now what's presenting your results. So you've introduced, you've done your literature review, you've presented your methods, and the next thing now is the result of your research. So your result clearly, you know, presents your findings, like it shows the outcomes of your research without interpreting them yet. This is where we do a lot of mistakes sometimes, because while presenting our results, we're also discussing them, which leaves us nothing for the next section. So it just shows the research section should just show the output of your research. Then use data to support your research, including charts, graphs, where appropriate, and stay objective. Present your data factually without adding personal opinions or interpretations. So let's look at the key components of results. Excuse me, I don't know. Okay, yeah. So key components of the results section. So what are the key components? As mentioned, you present your data. That's basically the reason for your results section. So you share the results obtained from your research in a logical and organized manner. You see, you're talking about structure again under results in a logical and organized manner. So you have to have it step by step, just like in your methodology. So if you've said sampling in your methodology, so what is the result of that sampling? So if you decide to do this kind of analysis, what is the result of that analysis? You have to take it step by step, ensuring that you're not missing out anyone or putting the first in the last, put what's supposed to be in the first result, presenting it lastly. So you have to ensure that it is organized. For example, the survey results indicate that 85% of households experience improved access to electricity after adopting solar power, right? That means, and how do you present it? You probably use the chart or you chart, a bar chart, whatever. And that's what takes us to use of visual aids. It includes tables, graphs, charts to display your data. You know, these days, some of the journals, once you have very beautiful, one of my professors will say, this your presentation, this your result is ugly. Once it tells you this your result is ugly, just know that the pictures, your pictorial, you don't have enough pictorial view of your results, or you don't have enough, enough table, or the colors you've used is not so good, because that's another thing to also consider. While you're using visual aids, you have to ensure that you use colors that attracts the reader. If you don't have those very good tables, graphs, or charts to be able to, you just make your result section very kind of general. So once you get to the results section, someone should be able to look at the graphs even before they read whatever content you have there and be able to say, oh, and from this bar chart, I can see that this is higher. It means that the result of this research shows that the use of solar power has increased energy access by this, and this is lower. So that's so for example, now we have a bar chart illustrating the change in electricity assets before and after solar implementation. That is clear. It just shows the difference. So you don't even have to say so much. It's very understandable by the reader. Then we have highlight key patterns or trends. You want your result to emphasize significant findings or any that emerge from the data. So the adoption rate of solar energy was highest in regions with strongest government support, or it was highest in the region with existing infrastructures. You have to be able to highlight the key patterns or the trends that made your results the way it is, that made you have that particular output. You need to actually emphasize that and avoid interpretation. Like I said in the beginning, you have to save the explanation and discussion of the data for the next section. This section, say, for instance, now look at this example saying, this section presents the raw data collected, interpreted, and will be discussed in the following section. Or we don't usually use following when it comes to paper. You can be specific, or will be discussed in section 4, which I'm sure you've already highlighted in your introduction, end of your introduction, where you're talking about structure. So the key components of results should be how you present the presentation of your, ensure you use visual aids. Like, this is very important. And there are so many ways. I know we cannot go deep into that, but these days there are a lot of apps, artificial intelligence platforms that can help you, generate even these beautiful graphs, tables, without you necessarily doing that. They can help you. You just need to say, oh, this is what you want to be able to acquire. Or you have that result, maybe in numbers, you have it in table, but you know that it should be better for you to have it maybe in a graph or in a form of figure that captures your audience. So you can actually take these and put this and say, oh, this particular, I can't remember some of them, but before the end of this, if I remember some of them, I'm going to share, where you just input your data, and this helps you to generate that that particular figure that you want, or that particular graph or chart. It even gives you ideas, or why not present it in this way? Even using ordinary Excel sheet, most of the time, if I have a table, from that Excel sheet, I'm already clicking, analyze the data, under analysis, just check, analyze this data. It gives you different ways that you can present your results, which makes it way, way better. So ensure that you don't have a lot of, instead of having just written words there, you just make sure that you have a lot of visuals and be able to analyze the trends, be able to highlight them, let it be visible to anyone that is going through. So what are those tips for writing results? Same thing. I wouldn't want to keep repeating. Say be clear and concise. Use appropriate visuals. Also, when using visual, you have to be careful because maybe there are data that that results that that it will be better represented by maybe a pie chart, and then you're using a bar chart. So you have to be very careful to ensure that you use the correct visuals for your representations. Then report both positive and negative findings. Be transparent with your results. I know sometimes, for those of us doing research, at times we want to, manipulate results because what you have in mind, we don't get that at the end. But you have to be very careful. And that is why it is better to be able to report both your positive and negative findings instead of trying to manipulate the results to ensure that it is all positive. So let's watch out for that. Now let's look at the next section, which talks about writing the discussion. That's the discussion of your results now. So you've presented your results. Now this is the time to interpret your results. So this explains what your results mean in the context of your research questions. It connects to the literature. Like I mentioned earlier, it connects you back to your literature review, what previous studies have done, and now what makes yours different, something you've highlighted in your literature review. So this relates to your findings to the previous studies, and it explains the significance, discuss why your findings are important and what they contribute to the field. This is what your discussion of result is all about. So what are those key components? Interpret the results by explaining the implications of your findings. For example, the results suggest that solar energy can significantly improve rural electrification in regions with limited grid access. And that's based on what you presented in your result, maybe in the bar chart now, where you have that we mentioned earlier, where you have energy, solar energy when it's implemented and before the implementation. So you always go back to that and say, oh, as presented in figure so, maybe figure 3 or figure 10, the results suggest that solar energy can significantly improve rural electrification in regions with limited grid access. Then moving forward, you relate your results to your finding, right? This is where you're now discussing it. Relate findings to literature by comparing your results with previous studies and discuss whether they align or contradict existing research. So for example, this finding is consistent with Smith's 2020, Smith, like in reference, study on renewable energy in developing countries, but contradicts earlier research by so. Sometimes we usually omit this, sometimes we don't mention, but we might not mention the specific study because maybe we've done a wide range of literature review, but yet we always need to have like the latest development in that area. So if the latest progress in that area is all about exploring maybe solar energy to increase energy access in that region, but it's not specific to rural development. So, and in your study, yeah, this has been done, but this time around, you're talking about what? Rural development, not just to increase energy access in the urban area like in previous study. So you have to be able to clearly, show that and how this aligns with existing study that you actually reviewed. Then what do you address? Address your research questions by revisiting your original research questions or hypotheses and explain how the results answered them. For example, our findings support the hypothesis that solar power can provide a sustainable solution to rural electrification based on your results, on what has been presented. And then you discuss, acknowledge any limitations in your study and how they may have affected the results. So one limitation of this study is a small sample size, which may limit the generalizability of the findings. It means that if you had a bigger sample size, these might actually apply in regions that are bigger or that are better or they are doing well. So you're saying that the accuracy of this might be limited because of the small sample size. Then you recommend areas for further research to build on your findings. This sometimes when it comes to recommendation, sometimes some have it under discussion of results, right? Briefly, and at times under conclusion. So it depends. So it depends on, there are different formats, different journals, and different ways of presentation. While you can mention them in your discussion of results, sometimes you go to the conclusion area and you highlight it, like a subsection to say a recommendation for future research and all that. So for example, we have future research should explore the long-term sustainability of solar energy in rural communities. So that's one recommendation. And then that is it for the key sections, the key components of your discussion of results section. So what are the tips for writing them? Be objective. Present a balanced view, discussing both strengths and limitations of your results. Avoid overgeneralization. Be conscious when drawing broader conclusions from your findings. Stick to what your data supports. Don't think about what has been done in this paper and you think, oh, you just want to add it, or because of what, because of maybe general belief or general perspective of a lot of people on that particular topic. Just stick to what your data supports or what your results was able to, what your methodology was able to give as output. So yes, then we look, it should provide insights, not just summary. So go beyond just summarizing your results, explain why they matter and what they mean for your field. So don't just summarize, oh, this was done and the result shows that this is higher than this. Yes, but okay, if it's higher, how does it impact? What does it do? What's the difference? How do we move forward? So it should provide insights and not just generalizing and just providing summary, like you're just reading. Should be able to have a take home from your discussion on results. And now we move towards the conclusion. The purpose of the conclusion is just summarizing the key findings of the whole research. The outcome is like a recap of the most important outcomes of your research. It answers your research questions, clearly stating how each research question has been addressed as posed in the introduction, and also highlights contribution, like the significance of your research and contribution to the field. And like I said earlier, sometimes under your conclusion is where you also have your record. So what are those key components? Like we mentioned, summarizing the main findings. So let's say, for example, this study found that solar energy significantly improves access to energy access, right? In Nigeria. So also come to say, does it answer the question that was posed in the beginning? It directly assesses, it should directly address how your findings relate to the original research questions. So we said the findings confirm that The solar power can provide a sustainable and cost-effective solutions for rural electrification. Again, explain the contribution to knowledge. Research fills the gap in the literature by focusing on the long-term impact of solar energy in rural areas of Nigeria. What are the practical implications of your whole research? Which means you mention how the findings could be applied in real-world settings or suggest policy changes, right? So the results suggest that policymakers should invest in solar infrastructure to meet energy access goals. Do you get that? In a way, that's your recommendation. You're already recommending. So practical implications, this is what has happened. So how can this be improved? And that takes us to recommending future research. Future research should examine the social and cultural factors affecting the adoption of solar energy. That's just an example, right? So again, what are those tips you need to have in mind when writing your conclusion? Be concise. One thing you don't want to do is, because most of the time, if you are not careful, you find out that what was written in the introduction is repeated in conclusion. So you have to be very, very careful with that you're not using the same words like form of repetition. The conclusion should be brief and to the point. Summarize the key takeaways without introducing new information. Summarize your findings without repeating detailed data or information from earlier sections. That's from introduction, literature, methodology, result, and discussion. Make sure you're not repeating that, but you're summarizing it using different words, using different analogy. They end on a strong note. Leave a lasting impression by emphasizing the importance and relevance of your research. In conclusion, conclusively, this research has undertaken so, and the result shows that this has happened, right? And then we know that this research will have an impact. So for maybe stakeholders, to take notes, recommendations for these, just conclude on a very strong note. And that is it for the whole key sections of your paper or thesis. Those are the key sections. I don't know if I need to recap. It has to do with title, your abstract, your introduction, literature review, methodology, results, discussion of results, and your conclusion. Now that we are done with our conclusion, we can now go back and write our abstracts. So whatever it is that you've drafted in the beginning, or maybe you've not drafted at all, you just have your topic. It is now time for you to write your abstract. So you write that abstract and to be able to capture what you have from the beginning to the end of your research. And then another very important place why our papers can be rejected is the reference. There are different types of referencing style, IEEE, APA. So you have to ensure that you know which is required, for the journal you're submitting to. So what's the purpose of the reference section? Actually, it's just to give credit to the sources. We'll say something, everything come out from your head. You read something right, everything you've written in the paper, it didn't just fall from heaven. You read something somewhere, so ensure that you give credit to the sources. Acknowledge the work of others that you have used in your research. Ensure academic integrity. You don't want plagiarism. So make sure you cite where necessary, have footnotes if it's important to have footnotes there. And then allow readers to locate sources. Somebody has gone through your paper, you reference, they might also want to be able to check that reference to get more information about the method. Because there are times that you're building on a particular methodology, right? Which you do not want to come and analyze in your own paper. You're just building on it. So clearly you've stated that, building on this method that was used in so study, with the year and everything. So when somebody wants to get a clear picture, you've gone through it of what your work is all about. They go back to that particular reference also to see how it is done. And then before they continue reading your own paper, So it is very, very important to reference, and not just reference, you have to reference correctly. So what are those key components of the reference sections? Use a consistent citation style. So if you are using APA, you are using IEEE, Chicago, whatever it is, you always see them in your Word document. Ensure that you are what? Consistent. Ensure all entries are formatted according to the guidelines. So after you've imputed your reference, ensure that you check one after the other to be sure that some words are not missing, or it's not where you're supposed to be. Italics is in italics, where it's supposed to be bold is bold, so where the year is supposed to be is there. So ensure you check that. Also include all sources cited in the text. Every source mentioned in your paper should be included in the reference list. Don't do the mistake. And how can you do this? Is by using what referencing tools. Double check that all in-text citation match up with full reference entry. So if your in-text citation is 100, it means you have to have what? 100 references when you look at your reference section. So organize alphabetically. Arrange the sources alphabetically by the author's last name. This also depends sometimes on some journals. If two sources have the same author, order them by the year of publication. And lastly, ensure completeness. Each reference entry should include all required information, such as author name, publication year, the title of that paper, book or journal, whatever it is, page numbers. It is very important. Example for a book now, Brown A, 2018, Energy Policies in Developing Nations, it also brings out the printing press, the name of that printing press. So it is there. So now, what are the tips for writing the references in section 1? Use reference management tools. This will make your life easier. You don't want to write your research and be manually writing your paper. You're manually imputing, oh, this, put on, oh, this name, or you're writing it and at the end of the day trying to look for it. Reference tools like Zotero, Mentally, or EndNote can help you organize and format your references. Like, I don't even joke with it. It makes your life easier. It makes you be able to follow up at any point in time, even when you're transferring your text from one place or copying and pasting to another, or if somebody else opens, it makes it easier. Ensure that you have that already downloaded or installed on your system before you even start writing. It is very, very important. Then check for accuracy, because sometimes we have these tools, and the way they put it, when you're trying to use maybe, let's say, IEEE style, and after referencing, if you don't check, the author names might have been missed, or the title page. So you have to also check in the reference tool, say that in the reference tool that there is no mistake. There are places that they ask you, do you want to edit, or do you want to edit the information and all that? So it's very, very important to check for accuracy. Don't just assume that, oh, the reference tool has done that for you. So you need to check for that. Then lastly, you have to follow the required style. Be consistent with the citation style throughout the paper. Don't use IEEE, then come and use APA like that. So you have to follow the required citation style. I think that is all for reference. This next section is not everyone that has. Sometimes if you don't have such data, you do not need to have it. So it's optional. And that's what the appendices section. The appendices, it just talks about providing supplementary information. So if there are maybe additional material that supports your research, but it's not essential to understanding the main text, you need to add some of those things. Keep the main text focused. Appendices allow you to include extra details without cluttering the main body of the paper. Sometimes you have like a very wide range of data, or maybe for those who do programming, your codes and all that, you can't add them into the paper, right? So you attach them as appendix to the journal. You have to put them separately. So what do you include? It includes your raw data. Provide data sets, calculations, or transcripts that were too large to include in the main text. Additional figures or tables. Include detailed charts, graphs, or tables that will disrupt the flow of the paper if placed in the results sections. Remember, structure is logical arrangement. You want your paper to be very easy to follow. You want it to be clear. So you don't want to have, even though the data is important, you don't want to have it in between those main sections. So you can always attach. Usually we'll put in quotes, C, it depends on the sign, S, so. So it means it's in the appendix. See this, for more explanation. Or maybe those long tables, those historical data and all that. You don't want to include them in your main test. So you need to add them in this section.
Thank
Questionnaire.
you.
Hello.
Yes, hello. Just wanted to remind you that due to time constraints, can we write it up?
Yes, I'm writing up. I missed the last section now. So we have the question. Thank you so much. We have the questionnaires and interviews you can include, then the technical details, we can include that. And like I said, tips for using appendices, label clearly, use appendices for supporting essential information, keep it organized. Those are the main things. And this is very important. Once you have your paper, take breaks before editing, check for clarity and flow, eliminate redundancies, and focus on grammar and style. Share with your colleagues, share with your friends, let them go through for you. Proofreading is very important. The more you look at it, the better the paper gets. So this is very important. What are those additional tips, for success for writing a paper? Start early. Give yourself plenty of time for research, writing, and revisions. Avoid leaving the writing process until the last minute. Create an outline. This is something that you don't even joke with. Make sure you have an outline from the beginning. Before writing, plan the structure, stay organized, seek feedback regularly with your supervisors, peers, or colleagues. As you continue, chapter 1 is done, let them go through it. Introduction, methodology is done, let them go through it, and not put everything together at once and then send to them. Write in sections. Break the tags down by writing one section at a time, rather than attempting to complete the entire paper in one go. And what are the other additional tips? Use writing tools like Grammarly. It will help you to correct your sentences, stay consistent, maintain the same tense, voice, and citation style, and set realistic goals. So, for example, you try to say, okay, I'm writing 500 words a day, or I use 20 minutes to write every day. Be consistent. You have a great paper. And at this point, I'm going to say thank you all for listening and having me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. It is really insightful. Even though I have graduated, I've learned so much and also learned a lot from the mistakes I made when I was doing my PhD. Thank you so much, ma'am. So we will go directly into the question and answer section. So I will take 3 questions from the chat, and then we take 1 person, and then we move to the end of today's webinar. So I will go directly. We have Christina, who is asking if it is possible to do practical exercise about do a paper where the points mentioned in the PPT are indicated.
Okay. I think this is what I would advise. Being a lecturer for over 10 years now, there's something that we do in my research team to help students. So I don't know if for OAAD network, we can adopt that. It has to do with mentorship, right? So for this training that has been done, for students who are willing, to have some kind of mentor, you can match and make. So maybe a student, maybe Dr. Hudal, Dr. Elijah, now you have some students with them and you're writing. It starts with giving them something like literature review. Say, okay, do literature review on this particular topic. So they go do, they definitely will submit to you. You go through it, maybe on the paper you're working on. So that way they can learn. So, and the more you write, the better you get. So I think we can adopt that style. It's going to be some form of mentorship within the OAAD network, where you attach students to maybe a particular a particular doctor or someone who is working on a particular paper. They give you feedback, you return back to them. I think that way it is possible for them to have the practical knowledge of what we discussed today.
Okay, thank you very much. We have Victor and other brothers and sisters that are asking for the PPT, if they can have the PPT.
Please, can you repeat that? I didn't hear
Yeah,
that.
they are asking if they can get the PPT that you've just used for the training.
Definitely, I'll provide it to OAAD so they can get it across. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? We take one person. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand and then we proceed. Anybody who wants to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, please introduce yourself and ask your question. Very short.
Thank you very much. I'm Hassan Soare, a student from UIB. Of course, mine is not a question. It's just like a favor that during next presentations, I want to advise or suggest that we do it by sections so that for us coming up at new researcher, we'll be able to understand the topic very well. Let's say for today, if we are talking about purely literature review, let's ensure that we really hammer home all the necessary skills required to write a very good literature. Through that, students can learn how to do it. But of course, the presentation was extremely wonderful, but the time limit do not permit the presenter to actually explain some of the areas really necessary, like the literature review and that of the discussions, because most times in our research writing, we have problem with literature review and that of the discussion sections. We'll be writing, we're having a very good introduction, a very good methodology, but when it comes to the matter of discussions, that is why some of us face problems. So I want to suggest that in our next coming sections, let's treat it by sections and really ensure that we really hammer home everything that requires for us as an upcoming researcher. That's my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that, sir. Thank you. Like I mentioned during the course of the presentation, when it comes to literature review is like why, especially when you're writing things like maybe review papers, there are different types. So if we really want to dwell on that, we are going to like spend the whole different section on its own. So thank you so very much for that insights.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Maybe we will plan it with the economic research group. So, yeah. So we are at the end of today's session. I will hand over to Mr. President for the closing remarks.
Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Yes, the OAAD president is not available to do the closing remarks. So, as the coordinator of the OAAD network, the Women's Network, I'm going to do the closing remarks. So I will first of all love to thank Engineer Susan. Engineer Susan, I'm so glad you honored our invitation to be here tonight. I don't know what what I enjoyed most, your smile or your presentation. Really, it made me happy. Yes. It was a wonderful presentation, and I'm so happy that you are here to teach us. I learned a lot as well from you tonight. So thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I also want to thank all the students that were able to participate in today's training. I hope you guys learned a lot as well, just like I did. And the other people from other countries that joined, not just from Botswana, from Nigeria, from other countries, African countries, and even some students in China here. Thank you all for being here. Today is just the first day of the training. So we still have 2 more days to go. And believe me, tomorrow is going to be another wonderful day. So you wouldn't want to miss it. And I also want to let you know, if you haven't filled the form, the attendance form, please look at the charts where a code was sent and a link was sent to please endeavor to fill the form so that you can get your certificate. And for you to get the certificate, you must be in attendance for 3 whole days. Don't miss any day. And then you get your certificate at the end of the training. So thank you everybody for making out almost 3 hours. We budgeted 2 hours, but she gave us more than what we asked for. So I'm so grateful, Dr. Susan. I'm so grateful. Imagine having you as a lecturer in in the university. Your students are blessed. They are so lucky to have you. Really, you know, you are cool, calm, collected, and you know your teaching was so perfect. And I love you for that. Thank you so much. So that would be all for tonight. So I'm looking forward to seeing every one of you tomorrow and on Saturday. Remember, tomorrow is the same time, the same 8 p.m. China time and 2 p.m. Botswanan time. So just try and be here on time. On Saturday, it's going to be 9 a.m. Botswana time and 3 p.m. China time, Beijing time. So please, I would love to see even more than we have today. So I want all of you to come. Please invite your friends, your classmates. Please do so that they can come and learn with you. Thank you so much for being here, for participating. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much. Bye.
Before we go, can the moderator help us to take a picture of the people? Can we open our videos, our screen, so that we can take a group picture before we leave? Please, it's important. Please, Huda, please, can you take a screenshot of the screen?
Okay, screenshot, right? I don't know how to take that picture.
Yes, please do.
Okay, wait a second. Oh my God. Why I can't see everybody?
Take it in batches. Take it in batches.
Sorry, but
Make your screen a full screen so that you can get everybody at once, or you can take it in batches.
nope, I can't. Can you help?
Should we smile now?
I don't forget myself.
Is that okay?
No.
Okay. There are so many people that are yet to open their cameras. Huda, are we good? Are we good to go?
I think it's better if you unshare your screen. Make unshare.
No, I can just see you guys. I cannot see all the participants on the screen.
Just take the ones you can see and then
Dr. Jane, you can check the group chat, the WeChat group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have helped to do that.
Oh. Thank you so much, Dr. Linda. Thank you. Thank you. I think someone has helped us to do the folder. So
Can you spotlight the Botswana group so you can see them together?
the Botswana.
It will be able
Oh,
to show.
yes, I can see from Maybe's screen, right?
Yes, make it a spotlight.
Hulda, can you please do that? Because I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, Maybe's screen. Yes, the Botswana group. Okay. Please, Linda, help us to screen again, do a screenshot again. Okay.
They're coming together, so maybe I should wait a bit, or should I take it now?
Don't be shy.
We're happy to see you all.
Yes.
Just take up the hat so that we can see your face.
Yes, and stop covering your smile. I don't know why you're doing that. The girl with the car.
Remove the hat. Remove the hat.
It seems she's a Trump supporter.
Okay, please, Linda, help us. Anyone?
Peter.
Wow.
Peter,
So many people there in Botswana. I think I'm going to move to Botswana.
It's okay.
Oh.
Wow, that's beautiful. Wow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take off your head.
All right, that's beautiful. I think we got you guys. Dr. Mavis, you also take a good picture over there for us. A clearer one for us. Thank you all once again. Thank you all, Engineer Susan. Thank you, Mavis, the moderator. Thank you, Dr. D, the president of OAAD, and thank you to every single person that made out time to join us tonight for this training. I'm so happy to have you guys here. I'm so happy that you all came, and I hope to see you tomorrow and next tomorrow as well. Thank you and goodbye. And please, if you